Because say in Spanish can be used in lots of different ways, and we'll talk about these today, how they're used. And I'll come to this on Monday, but some of you already did that on Oaks during the hurricane. But just to review, oops. Okay, so for those of you who were active and participatory during the hurricane, muchas gracias. And you all are familiar with the Flash Cultura video about La Guardia in Argentina. And if you're not, you need to become familiar. You need to watch this Flash Cultura video because it's on the Chapter 10 test. In Argentina, se usa la guardia. Even if you didn't watch the video, what's this saying? In Argentina, se usa la guardia. What's that saying? Right, exactly. It's used. They use, right? In Argentina, they use la guardia. Excelente. And a lot of other uses of this concept of say that was on your homework, and you'll have more homework before Monday that practices it, is often seen when you're traveling in Spanish-speaking countries and you see signs. There's signs everywhere, and you're going to see say on almost all of these signs. And so many of these signs telling you what not to do and what's allowed and what's not allowed. Se prohíbe fumar dentro del edificio is stating what? What is this telling everyone to do or not do? No smoking, right, exactly. And so we know not to smoke if we see this sign in a Spanish-speaking country. But really, let's examine the grammar now. Now that we have identified what it means, let's take a look at the grammar. First of all, we have the pronoun se coming before the verb, like we usually see it. And then we have our verb conjugation, prohíbe. Is it singular or plural? Is this verb singular or plural? It's singular, right? Because the plural form would be prohíben. It's singular because why? There's no subject. How do we know how to conjugate this verb? Why is this verb singular? If there's no subject, what determines the conjugation? Well, I'll explain that and I'll clarify that here in a second. Is there anything else that might determine? Let's look at another example before I tell you, because it's so much more effective if you figure it out rather than me telling you. Let's look at this example. Let's focus on the meaning first. No se permiten mascotas. So what's this basically saying?
No pets allowed.
No pets allowed. Exactly. Muy bien. So boom, now we know what the word for pet is in Spanish. Mascota. No? Or you might hear the word animales domésticos. And we know that they're not allowed because we see the verb permitir, which means to allow, and no. We have the say again, but there's no subject. So let's take a look at the form of this verb. Is it singular or plural?
Plural.
Here it's plural. Why? Because of mascotas. Exactly. Mascotas is what makes it plural. So now you're going to see something more consistent in a pattern. All right, what's this one saying?
House for sale.
House for sale. Exactly. You would see this all over the place in Spanish-speaking countries because communities are more condensed in cosmopolitan metropolis areas and cities. Lots of apartment buildings. You're walking down the street in a city and you see se vende, se vende, se vende, or se alquila, which means for rent. So that's what it means. Now let's take a look at the verb. We still have se, and we have the ending of the verb. Is it singular or plural? Singular because why? Casa. Casa is singular, so our verb is otro ejemplo. Menos obvio, pero más aplicado con el tema de la lección 10. Se necesitan dadores de sangre. What's this sign indicating? What does this mean? Blood donors, right, exactly. Blood donors, what? What about blood donors? Are needed, right, exactly. Blood donors are needed. And so we have our pronoun se, otra vez. Our verb, singular or plural? Plural, because why? Dadores, donors. Coming from the verb dar, to give, is plural, so our verb is plural. Entienden? So really it's like muy fácil, singular or plural, nada más. Y se habla español most of the time. What's the saying?
We speak Spanish.
Yeah, most of the time, right? Spanglish. Spanish is spoken, they speak Spanish most of the time. Muy bien. So we still have se in our verb, habla, singular or plural? Singular, because why? Español is singular. Okay, so now we know what everything means grammatically. Let's take a look of when we would use say and why we would use say. So first of all, just to review, we looked at a bunch of signs, okay? Keep that in mind. So we were just talking about reflexive verbs. We're all familiar with reflexive verbs. Enfermarse, divertirse. I was just talking about how when we see that little say on the end of the verb, that verb's telling us, I'm reflexive. When you conjugate me, you have to use a reflexive pronoun. Me if the verb is in the yo form. Te if the verb's in the to form. Se if the verb's in third person, etc. Nos if it's in nosotros, right? Present tense, past tense, future tense. Any type of way you put it, it has to have a pronoun that agrees with the verb conjugation. So that's one use of say that we're familiar with. But we're going to take a look at some other uses, and I'm going to show you with examples. So in all of those signs, and this is very, very common with signs, the say is used because it's talking to people impersonally. That's what a sign does. It tells you, in general, or what they do. Spanish, they speak Spanish most of the time. Or they need blood donors. Okay? So the say can be classified as what's called this impersonal say. It translates as a generic you or they when there is no specific subject. And in every single one of those signs or examples, there's no subject. There's no subject. It was what came after the verb that determined the conjugation. Dadores necesitan. Habla español. And then another interpretation, and really it's just a matter of interpretation, is what's called the passive say. So, se habla español, you can interpret two ways. Either way is correct. They speak Spanish most of the time, or Spanish is spoken, the passive voice. And be careful, because when we say passive voice or passive say, I'm not talking past tense. I'm not talking preterite or imperfect, which is what we were talking about earlier. I'm just using what's called the passive voice. Is spoken, or is studied, etc., or are researched. And again, we have no specific subject, and what comes after the verb determines the verb conjugation. ¿Entienden? All right. Y un uso más, and this one is much more complicated, but actually quite comical to me as a native English speaker and a non-native Spanish speaker. This is called the unplanned say, okay? First, let's focus on the meaning, and then we'll figure out what's going on and why it, to me, is funny. Se me cayeron las pastillas is saying what? Based on the picture, what happened here? I spilled the pills. Right, exactly. That's all we're saying. I spilled the pills. In English, when we convey that idea of spilling or falling or dropping or breaking or losing, we take ownership of that action, and the verb spilled is conjugated based on what I did. However, in Spanish, what's our verb in this sentence? Cayeron, exactly. Is that in the yo form? No. Actually, it's conjugated in third person plural, because why? What's determining the las pastillas. So this is why it's funny to me in Spanish. They take no ownership of any accident or unintentional activity that occurs in Spanish. Grammatically, I think it's hilarious, because I'm like, how interesting that when they lose something, and I'll show you here in the book the verbs that go along with this concept. To fall or to drop, to damage, to forget, to lose, to leave behind, to break. You know, if you say profeseta, I forgot my pesos. In English, you would say I forgot. In Spanish, you would blame it on the pesos. You would say se me olvidaran. You'd use the plural preterite of olvidar. Se me olvidaran los pesos. And so what's up with the me? What does the me tell us? Who it happened to. Not necessarily who did it, but who it happened to. And then this say just cues that it's an unplanned event. Some other examples. with the unplanned say. En la lección 9 hablamos de las celebraciones. Aquí tengo una imagen, una foto de una boda. A los recién casados, los novios, se les cayó el pastel. So in English, what does this mean? Basically, you went to the wedding and what happened? The cake fell. Right, exactly, the cake fell. But in Spanish, or, they dropped the cake. In Spanish, they're not the subject of this verb, cayó. What's the subject? The cake, exactly.
The cake dropped itself.
Right. And it happened to them. Les is referring to whom? Who's Les referring to? The couple, right? They. Los recién casados. And so I want to highlight something that's going to be really important in 202. This personal this object marker Have you ever heard that term before? Personal object marker I overemphasize it when I teach it in 102 because even though it seems so insignificant and little and, irrelevant, it's muy importante. Remember previously in chapter 9 where I was like, you're going to have some verbs, you're going to have some infinitives, and sometimes the supersite or even on Wednesday's test, there's a pronoun before that verb. Remember me saying that? And I was like, don't ever conjugate the verb based on that pronoun. Do you remember? Maybe at all. I mean, a lot's happened since. But anyway, on the test, on Wednesday, you had profecita. Then you had nos, and you had the verb conocer. And it's like black and white evident to me. Who remembered me saying, never conjugate the verb in the form that the pronoun is provided. Always focus on the subject. And so on the test, some people wrote profecita nos conoció, the preterite tense el ella form for profecita, and some people accidentally wrote conocimos because they were thinking nos was the subject. First of all, nos, me, te, les is never a subject pronoun. Those are all object pronouns. And secondly, that personal it's not necessary with nos because it's super obvious who nos is referring to, us. And that item on the test was she met us. That's what that was saying. And you were supposed to complete it with on the first day of class or in August or in Spanish class. And some of you all did that and some of you all didn't. See, Marisa? Conoció is how it's pronounced, yeah. So C-I-O with an accent. Anyway, so listen carefully because for those of you who know right away that you got that wrong, you need to pay attention. This is called a personal or an object marker and it's very important because when an comes before a person, our native English-speaking brains look at that and see, people at the beginning of the sentence, that's the subject, but that tells us, no. I'm not the subject, I'm the object. So whenever you see an with a person, identify it immediately as an object, and do not, I repeat, do not let it influence your verb conjugation. And I want you to remember that for 202, because you're going to have to navigate through objects and indirect objects and direct objects and subjects and know what influences the verb conjugation and what determines pronouns, like in this case. Otro ejemplo. So what happened here? What's going on here in este ejemplo? Okay, chicos, aquí en el libro tienen el vocabulario. Who lost the antibiotics? The mother, right. In English, she would take the blame. But he's consoling her because they kind of lost themselves. Los antibióticos is determining the conjugation in the preterite tense. And the lay simply states what? Who it happened to, right. La mamá, no? Is she the subject in Spanish? No. She's the what? She's the object. Muy bien. She's the object. How did Graham know that? Right away, because he was listening to what I just said. Gracias, Graham. There's nothing that makes me happier as a professor. See, How did he know that? How did he know immediately that that was the word I was looking for? That, Mom, the object marker a. Exactly, the a. Muy bien. Gracias, Jorge Guillen. What about this one? What happened here? She forgot to take the x-ray, to get the x-ray. Excelente. So, in English, she forgot. But in Spanish, no es así. Olvidó is singular because why? Who's the subject here? What's the subject? Sacar la radiografía. Exactly, sacar. And just a side note, infinitive, sacar, se prohíbe fumar, that first example or second example, infinitives are always singular. So on the super side, if you have to conjugate verbs and you have another verb, it's singular, always. And so the ley is referring to what? La médica. Because is she the subject? No, she's the object. Eso. Muy bien. Ahora sí. Okay, so this is one that we're going to add. You know that list of phrases that's on Oaks, and hopefully a lot of you all printed out. It's called Language Ladder, and it's got like no sé or tengo una pregunta or no listo, those kind of expressions. Add this to that list. Okay, because this is muy importante, and you'll get 2 pesos if you use this expression in context. You can't just blurt it out randomly and get pesos. You have to use it in context. This verb olvidar means to forget. And you're students and your life is busy and you forget stuff a lot. So it's a really important thing to know how to say in Spanish, I'm so sorry, I forgot whatever, okay? So if you ever forget anything in Spanish and you say this in context, not randomly, just blurt it out, raise your hand like provoceta, and then you say this, but it has to be in context. If you forget anything, I'll give you 2 pesos. And here's how you would use it. Olvidó, yeah, just start forgetting stuff to earn pesos. Olvidó or olvidaron. Sorry, that's an O-L, not a T. Olvidó or olvidaron. And I've got 2 forms, singular and plural, okay? So if you forget your pesos, on a Friday I collect pesos, and you don't have them with you, but you want to turn them in on Monday, you can earn 2 pesos más by simply saying to me, Profesita, se me olvidaron los pesos. And I'll give you 2 pesos because you forgot your pesos. Pesos is plural, so we're going to use olvidaron now. But let's say you forgot your book, or it's time for the test and you forgot your pen or your pencil, or we're doing one of those compositions. You need a piece of paper, pencil, book, paper, pen. It's all singular. So if you forget it, you can say, Profesita, se me olvidó el libro, or se me olvidó una pluma, por ejemplo, and I'll give you 2 pesos. Okay, chicos?